Welcome and thank you for joining us for It's Time to Talk. Child sexual abuse in our country and in our nation is at epidemic numbers, and what we want to do today is invite you to join us with a panel of experts to talk about child sexual abuse and to share with you a wonderful international training that you can request and take so that you can learn to empower yourself to better recognize, report, and respond to child sexual abuse. Thank you again for joining us. We'll be talking today about the Stewards of Children Darkness to Light program. It is an international video-based program that facilitators can bring to your organization, your church, your communities, and train adults how to better recognize child sexual abuse, how to respond to it, and what to do when there are concerns about children. So today, in sharing this international program, we want to let you know that the emphasis is on the responsibility of the adults, that it squarely lies on our shoulders, that we assume the responsibility to protect our children. I'd like to take the time now to introduce you to a panel of experts and professionals and community members so that you will hear from them firsthand why they think this training is also a wonderful training to bring to your organization and your community groups so that you can become empowered on how better to recognize child sexual abuse. So without further ado, I would like to take the time to introduce our panel. On our left, we have Dr. Arvel Beckford, Chief Pediatrician, Office of Wellstar Health System, Lieutenant Everett Sabula from Cobb County Special Victims Unit. We have Officer Rivion Cole from the Cobb County Police Department. We have the Honorable Vic Reynolds, Cobb County District Attorney, Cobb Judicial Circuit. We have Paula Sparks, Assistant Director from SafePath Children's Advocacy Center. We have Linda Stouffer, reporter from WSB TV, Channel 2 News. Ann Stewart, Director of Primrose School of North Kennesaw, and Sabrina Watson, Director of Cobb County Department of Family and Children's Services. Thank you very much for joining us today, panel. And again, I'm going to share with you some statistics, and we're going to talk a little bit more about child sexual abuse because we have to open the conversation. And I thank you again for joining us today to do that. If we look at some of the basic statistics that we have with child sexual abuse, we have the numbers that are quoted are 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually molested or abused before the age of 18. Most never ever tell their stories of abuse. Add to that 39 million survivors of sexual abuse live in America today, and they never have told their stories as adults of their childhood story of abuse. Add to that where we are in our current society with Penn State, Boy Scouts, the Catholic Church. This can happen anywhere. And it is time for us as adults to take charge, to become empowered through the Darkness of Light Stewards of Children program so that we can be trained on how better to help our children, empower our individual citizens, and protect our communities. I'll give you a little bit of a tidbit of a history. Historically, the very first case of child abuse was a little girl by the name of Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen was brought into a system that did not exist. A social worker found her being abused by a family member, wanted to bring her into a system to protect the child. Unfortunately, when her social worker went to find a system to bring this child through, none existed. So she went and approached the philanthropic founder of the American Society on the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA. When she approached the gentleman, she said, "Is there any way that you could possibly bring this little girl through your organization?" He said, "I will have to qualify this child to be a part of the animal kingdom." That was in 1865. So he sat, he did his due diligence, he did his research, and he said, she, Mary Ellen, the first child to go through, will be qualified as an animal similar to the horse that we protected last week. We will bring her through our system. He then started the first organization in New York City to begin protecting children. So if we start from there, given our current conditions in our country right now and the cases we're aware of, I want to open it up to the panel as to why you think an international program that will teach individuals how to better protect children and empower themselves to feel comfortable to speak up if they know a child is being abused, why you feel this is an important training to bring to our community. And I'll just open it up to the panel. Ms. Stouffer.
Well, I think it's so interesting what you said, that this kind of abuse can happen anywhere, and if the figures are right, that 1 in 4 girls is abused in their lifetime, that means that all of us know someone who's been abused, whether we know they've been abused or not. But not only can it happen anywhere, it is happening even in our community. I mean, just this year there have been several fairly high-profile arrests or cases that have come forward just in Cobb County, Paulding County. It's happening in our communities, and part of bringing this to light is just discussing the problem, how to recognize the problem, and how to help the children who are trapped in that kind of abuse.
How does the media feel when they have to cover stories like this?
Well, I can speak for myself, and I'm a mother. It's stomach-churning. I mean, it's awful, and I think all of us feel so helpless. If we could just protect those kids and take them away from that situation. There's so many what-ifs anytime something like this comes up. Well, you know, why didn't the parents know? Why didn't the pastor know? Why didn't the other, adult volunteers recognize the abuse, whatever it is, in some kind of situation? But obviously, with any media coverage, we want to protect the victims further. And that makes it tricky for the media because we don't want to expose the children to, ridicule within their own communities. So it's very tricky for the media to handle situations like this.
Thank you. Lieutenant Sabula.
Just to dovetail off of that, one of the best things about Darkness to Light is that there's the change in the mandated reporting laws that took effect in July, giving the training through Darkness to Light and bringing that out to volunteers and people that are going to need that training because of the new mandated reporting laws. It just makes it that much easier for them to identify child sexual abuse or even child physical abuse for that matter and make the right report to the correct agencies. Either it's DFACS or it's law enforcement. It just gives them that additional training that they normally wouldn't have.
Excellent. And how does that wear on you as a lieutenant in the Crimes Against Children unit dealing with these cases day in and day out?
Well, of course, it's going to increase the caseload that comes into our office, but I'd rather have that increase rather than the decrease where we're not getting the reports at all and we're trying to find the children that are actually being abused. Having this new mandated reporting law where volunteers are required to report, anybody that has contact with children basically are required to report, just opens that door up so much more for us to do our job and our investigations and make sure that we're bringing these people to justice.
Wonderful. Dr. Beckford from Wellstar.
It's such an important topic, and I can't thank you enough for focusing on it, because the most important thing as a pediatrician and dealing with this all too frequently is for people to know that it takes a community to protect the child, and that as a nation we're judged by how we treat our children. And most importantly, that we help educate the community that there really aren't any stereotypes. That's the most critical factor, is that we have to realize that anyone can be a potential perpetrator. And one cannot say this situation is less likely or more likely. Tragically, as we have learned through the media recently, some situations are by the most trusted individuals. So one of the negatives that I think we have propagated in society is talking about things like stranger danger, because 85% of the time abuse happens at the hand of someone that a child knows very well or trusts. And so what we do in pediatrics is at every single opportunity and every single well check, when we examine a child, and we should examine that child from top to toe, and including the genital exam, is to use that as an opportunity. And I always say to my little patients in front of the parents, Dr. B wants you to know that I do need to examine your private area, but you need to know that even someone you know and trust very well, like a doctor, or a teacher or a coach or a family member or a neighbor may not ask to look at your private area or give you a touch or a hug or a word that feels uncomfortable, you should go straight to your mom or the closest individual you really trust and let them know. And then I ask the parent, the mom, for permission in front of the child. And I think that that's a really important message, because if we send the message about stranger danger, we're actually doing less than protecting the child, because we're creating an expectation that if it's someone you know, it must be all right. And I think that it is so important for children to have that self-respect and to empower them to speak out and not to be afraid.
That's excellent, and so wonderful that the medical field and your practice at Wellstar is owning that and putting the responsibility with the parents, but also empowering the children. That's huge, and that distinction between strangers and someone you know is so important. So thank you very much. Yes, R.C.
I think what SafePath has offered is an opportunity to expose child abuse, sexual child abuse, for what it is. And what it is a heinous crime that I believe it crosses all social, economic, and cultural boundaries on whether you're rich or poor, whether you are in a well-to-do neighborhood or maybe a lower income neighborhood. There are no boundaries. And the face of child abuse needs to be brought to the public, and I think the public needs to understand that these are people that look like any of us. And it can no longer be the elephant in the room, but exposure empowers us as citizens to dispute this, to deal with this, and maybe end it. You know, it can no longer be the deep, dark secret or the thing that has plagued us for so long. But the more exposure that we have, the more education that people get in terms of knowing the signs, knowing what to look for, knowing that it takes the entire community to participate and to get involved to prevent it, I think is crucial.
You actually took the training, didn't you?
I did.
And did you find it helpful?
That training was awesome.
Wonderful.
You know, from a personal, as you know, from a personal aspect, being a victim of child sexual abuse myself, there were things that even I learned that were not, coming from a personal perspective that I didn't know. And, the victimization, what it does, I don't think people realize the impact mentally, emotionally, physically, and the freedom that, people need. Imagine sitting at your Thanksgiving table and you're sitting across from a relative that had abused you as a child. You're sitting, you're having Thanksgiving, we're all getting ready to go to holidays. You're sitting across from this person and you're slicing turkey, and that's an abuser from your childhood. These are things that I think need to be brought to the light, out of the darkness,
right,
so to speak. And I think it's crucial, for the healing of our nation, of our communities, and to also to keep this from happening to children, and continuing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Reynolds.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Let me just echo a couple of comments that the doctor made. I want to take a moment to thank you and thank SafePath, and of course thank this panel for the courage and the willingness to take time to address this issue. Ginger, a couple of things about this program that that really have caught my attention as the incoming district attorney and as the individual who will put together the unit that will prosecute these cases in this county. I think the first thing it does that's very important is it puts the onus, the burden on us as adults. As the doctor said a moment ago, in the end, when history looks back over a time period, we will be judged by how we protect the weakest in our society. And as a society, as adults in that, and members of that group, it is our obligation, not only legally with mandatory reporting laws increasing, but morally and ethically to protect the least among us. The program also does something that I think is an added benefit. We can't have too many people who are able to recognize this issue. You can't have too many people. And so the program, the first step it does, it teaches people what to recognize, what to look for in determining whether or not an individual is a victim. Besides recognizing it, it teaches us how to respond to it. And so again, we can't have too many people to recognize and respond. And by recognizing by responding, hopefully it ultimately leads to what the goal of the program is, prevention. And it's an outstanding program.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your commitment, because I think that is from the field. If we're going out and we are training the community at large and everyone knows how to protect, knows how to respond, the system goes through and we protect children, we've got to have that strong backing from our judicial organizations, district attorney's office, to hold offenders accountable so that it is no longer a crime that can go unnoticed. So thank you very much. Sabrina, Department of Family and Children's Services.
Thank you. Ginger, we have over 300 children in foster care, and what's interesting is that not the majority of these children that are in care are as a result of abuse and neglect, but not sexual abuse. So they enter care, and our foster parents, we have actually trained with Darkness to Light, and we think that that's very important in terms of that they're with these children whom the statistics tell us that we are missing. A lot of these children have also been abused in a sexual manner. So we don't see that, but it will come to light, you know, in a manner of time when they're in the comfort of a foster home that's a safe environment. So it's really important for the foster parents to have that comfort level and that education level that they can feel comfortable talking about and recognizing some signs. So we have really found that this is helpful for our population in terms of the children that come into care, not because of sexual abuse, but that is something that has occurred in their life, but they haven't felt comfortable, or folks haven't recognized that that is part of their history of abuse.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Ann Stewart from Primrose, independent organization, a corporation in the community. What are your thoughts in terms of the importance of this training?
Well, I think this training is paramount for our parents, our teachers. So much of what everyone has echoed is that, you know, you don't think this will happen to you. You don't think this is going to happen to your family. And from a personal perspective, it did happen to our family. And I felt, you know, really at a loss because I had not had any other training other than, you know, what I had received in school about reporting abuse and that sort of thing. And when it happened to us, we just said, how did this happen? We knew this person. He was a friend of our family's. He went to our church. His wife works with me. You know, how could this have happened? And there was so much stigma that went along with that. So as a parent, we had to just kind of buckle down and say, you know what, these are our children. We want to make them right and whole. And having gone through counseling and training and help with SafePath and some private counselors, you know, they reach that point in their life where they're doing very, very well now. But then on the other side, I you know, walk through the halls of our school each day and I think, you know, I know these statistics. And do I want to think it's anybody in the school? Absolutely not. But is it realistic that it could be, or there could be someone who, you know, as an adult was abused and has never come forward? I would love to see this training come to our school and to go through child development centers throughout the whole state of Georgia and through the whole country. I think it's just paramount. When I did the training myself, it was just so eye-opening. Even after everything I had been through, there was just so much that I learned that was very helpful to me as a parent and as a director of a school.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I think one of the most poignant statements that you make is the stigma that goes along with child sexual abuse, even for children who have been abused, but their parents, and that we have got to make it as easy to say that you're a victim of child sexual abuse as it is for our community members to stand up and say they have breast cancer, or they have AIDS, or they have a child with autism. For some reason, the dark cloud still follows a child who has been sexually abused. So thank you very much for your comments and statements. Paula Sparks, Assistant Director at SafePath. What would you like to add in terms of how advocacy centers might play an instrumental role in sharing this training across the state of Georgia?
Well, from a facilitator standpoint, from SafePath, we reach out to different organizations, the churches, the schools, and we present it to anybody that asks. We present it to, along with the mandatory reporting aspect, we present the Darkness to Light training. And it's important, dovetailing on what some of these other folks have said, that if we're going to have the expectation that folks report, then we need to present the tools to them how to do that. We need to present how to react and how to prevent and how to respond. It's not good enough just to say that, well, you have to. We give you the choice, you make the choice to respond, and then you must choose the right direction, and we've given you tools how to choose. So I think that we as an advocacy group, we are the facilitators of that, and that's an important role that we play.
Do you continue to be surprised as a facilitator when you go out to different groups and organizations and train that the unawareness factor of how they are not aware of the stats and the response to some of the situations that they may be in?
I am constantly surprised from a professional in the field for a long time. I think that's part of it, is that I know this panel will say, well, if you see that, then you must report, but people don't understand what they should be doing sometimes. I think Penn State, the Boy Scouts of America, and the churches, it's shown us that there are folks out there, they knew what was going on, and either they chose not to report or they didn't know what to do, and they didn't know how to react and didn't know how to respond. So again, yeah, I'm surprised every day that we don't act, but sometimes I'm not surprised in that people didn't know what they were supposed to do.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. We are going to move now to where we will show the video. It is a 20-minute video that explains actually how the Stewards of Children is an international nonprofit organization that put together the program Darkness to Light, which seeks to protect children by putting the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of adults. So we will go to that video now. We invite our viewers to stay with us, watch a 20-minute video that I think will empower you and impact you so that you will want to call in and ask for this training. Thank you.
My earliest memory is being sexually abused by my great uncle at a family reunion. I was 4 years old.
I remember going into my first day of kindergarten, and already the thought of wishing I could commit suicide was there for me at 5.
We had a friend of the family. He would take us to his house and sexually abuse both me and my sister.
As a child, you don't know what the rules are, you don't know what the laws are, you don't know, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, you just know what you feel.
I didn't tell a living soul about the sexual abuse I suffered.
He was a man that was trapped by his demons. He was a man that made some horrible mistakes. He was just too scared to face what he had done.
You're dying to tell somebody, but you're also terrified of somebody finding out.
And now the big winner, Miss Colorado, crowned by last year's Miss America. She is Madeline Vanderbeer of Denver.
I grew up in the picture-perfect family. I was called the debutante Miss America. I was the first Miss America that they ever brought a family up on stage. We want you to meet America. We want you to meet the Vanderbeer family. These are the 4 beautiful daughters and the mother and the father, because we were a picture-perfect family. Incest in our family? Who would have even thought of the word in the 1950s? He started coming into my room when I was 5. And the one thing that I knew as a child is that there was no hope for me of it stopping. What I wanted to my father's death was his daytime love, and I never got that. I just got him at night, and that's all I had, and that's all I had to cling to.
A pedophile's going to be around children. That's what he wants to be, is around children. So he's going to be a priest, he's going to be a Boy Scout leader, he's going to be a teacher. I went to a school in downtown Charleston where I was molested by a teacher there over many years. If you met Fisher, you'd probably think of him like my parents thought, like my sister. He had a Porsche, he was funny, he was fast. He was whatever he knew you wanted him to be so that you'd be comfortable.
I was cleaning out the bathroom. It was my day to do the chores, and my father came home drunk. He ordered me to turn around. I don't know how I got out, when he stopped, but it seemed like forever. When your parent is telling you that it's okay for them to sexually abuse you, it's okay for me to be in there, then reality is being completely distorted.
Father Jim had a natural field of cultivating victims. He had the complete deference of his entire community. He had a position of great authority. Father Jim knew everyone's darkest secrets. And Father Jim had grades 1 through 8 in his backyard. All the Catholic school kids right there in the playground next to his house. I am the 5th of 7 children, and I'm the 3rd boy. So when it was time for me to become an altar boy in 2nd grade, it wasn't a choice. It was time. It was something, to be proud of. And it was something also that, set me up for attack. My father was actually very close friends with Father Jim. Now I know why. Father Jim was very close friends with my father. My father told him what a loving kid I was, and how affectionate I was, and how I kissed my father goodnight every night. And that allowed Father Jim to say, why don't you kiss me? Now this is my priest. I'm alone with him. I'm sitting in his lap. He's manipulated me for months and had this casual, sensual contact with me. I was powerless to say no to something like that. For me to be a 10-year-old child and have a 37-year-old man place his tongue in my mouth, his fat, fleshy tongue, was an experience of tremendous trauma.
I think it's so hard for people because they see like somebody my age talking about this, and so you picture me. But no, it was, a 9-year-old. I mean, I've since become really good friends with another person who was going through that, and he thought he was the only one. I mean, we used to have dinner, like 4 of us at Fisher's house on Tuesday nights. And I mean, I'd get to Fisher's I'd go home from school with them, go upstairs for 45 minutes, come downstairs 30 minutes before people came over for dinner. But my friend couldn't imagine that what happened to him up there happened to me, because it was just too insane.
Growing up, all I remember was violence and fear. It was not a happy time. That's why at 14, I wanted to kill myself, because I hadn't even told. All I knew is that I could not bear to be in that house with him. And so I was like the invisible child, that I did all the right things, and if I just stay invisible, I won't get hit. And if I stay invisible, he won't come in the bathroom.
I was about 11 or 12, and my father always came in late at night. Late meaning 10, 11, sometimes midnight. And he'd been in my room for maybe a half hour, and all of a sudden I heard footsteps coming down. My mother wore, they're called mules. It's a dressy bedroom slipper with a heel on it. So as she started down the steps, which were linoleum, I could hear the first step, and then the second step, very, very, very slowly. And then the third step, everything stopped for all three of us. All three of us knew exactly what each one of us was thinking and knew. It's the only time I ever felt my father afraid. He just stopped. And I thought, it's going to be over. She's going to come in. And then I heard a step up the steps and up the steps and up the steps. And I knew she would never, ever come to help me. I believe she made a choice, and she didn't choose me.
One of the reasons I didn't want to go to my father's funeral was because he didn't try to rekindle the relationship. It was like, okay, you did all this stuff when I was growing up, but you still could have came back. You still could have picked up the telephone. He was never going to be able to be a father to me, but we could have been, we could have had a relationship. We could have sung together. I remember just being in church. I wanted to sing with him. He had the most incredible voice, and that's what made me sad, was that I would have wanted to sing with him. And he didn't even come to me. He didn't know me well enough to know, just to pick up the telephone or to say, why don't you come to church with me? But he did have some things, and he was a man that was trapped by his demons. He was a man that made some horrible mistakes. He was just too scared to face what he had done.
I never repressed the memories of my sexual abuse, but I worked damn hard to suppress them and forget about them, because I thought it was a lot easier to forget about it and not deal with it than try to make sense of it all. I was at college on the campus of the University of Notre Dame, good Catholic university, and I read this story about this priest who was being prosecuted for sexually abusing children. I almost dropped off this park bench, because at that very moment, casually reading a story in the newspaper, I transformed in my own perception from confused to victim. It was at that moment that I realized I was the victim of a crime. I could put a label on it. I was sexually abused. It was startling, overwhelming. But I didn't have a press conference. I didn't go to the police. I didn't tell everyone I knew. I kept it quiet, because my perpetrator was still pushing my buttons to do so. So I went to my bishop, and I told him all about the sexual assaults that I had suffered for all those years. He was bound by the law to report it to the police, and my bishop chose not to. And that causes me pain to this day, that I had a chance to walk down to the police station and report him and get him put behind bars, and I lost out on that chance because I turned to my bishop to fix it, and he did not.
You're dying to tell somebody, but you're also terrified of somebody finding out. It's like holding a beach ball underwater, and that's what it is. I mean, you can't wait to let it go, but you're holding the world together as much as you can. It was all that far under the surface, but I made it. But for 30 seconds, I came to and said, "This has just got to end. I'm going to treatment." It took a while because it's like if you stop drinking, you have to feel, and if I feel, then I'll crack up. And that was sort of that was the low point. And then I sort of slowly but surely put it back together.
When I was 39, I went into physical paralysis and was unable to move. My head would work, but my body wouldn't work. And finally, I didn't know what else to do, so finally at age 40, I went into therapy. And I began to start dealing with what had happened to me from age 5 to age 18. I called my father at his office and said, "I need to talk to you." Terror would not have even begun to approach the feeling I had of talking to him about this. I was terrorized. He came in and sat down. I had notes. And I said, "This is the most difficult thing I've ever done." And he said, I'll be back in a minute. And he got up and he went up the winding staircase, which was right outside the door. He, 2 by 2, up the staircase, his bedroom right at the front of the staircase. I waited for a toilet to be flushed. I waited for a phone call to be made. He came back immediately. I didn't think he had a gun. I absolutely 100% knew he had a gun in his pocket. I knew that. I knew he could kill me or himself or both of us. But you know what? You can die a day at a time. You can just die a day at a time, or you can just say, you know what? I am going to do this. My father never denied anything. He said, if I had known what it would do to you, I never would have done it. And I left there thinking, he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't have done it. I grabbed onto that. If he'd known, he wouldn't have. He just really didn't know. He didn't know, he wouldn't have. And then, however many years later, I confronted him when I was 40, and I got the letter when I was 56. So 16 years later, I get a letter from a woman who writes to me, and in such detail, there is no doubt that my father sexually violated her when he was 74. He died when he was 75. He never stopped. He never stopped. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't care what it did to anyone. He absolutely knew what it did to me. It mattered not to him. That's what I've learned.
Though you can't see blood, there still is actual damage. And sexual abuse of children doesn't just create bad memories. The sexual abuse of children creates extremely damaged lives. So it has been a long journey to break through that wall of denial. It took counseling. It took the support of my wife. It took for her to challenge me, challenge my thinking, challenge the way I acted in relationships. The effects of sexual abuse 30 years ago still manifest themselves as if the abuse happened today.
I don't think people have a clue that this permeates your life the way it does. I remember sitting in that courtroom and to hear the same story from somebody 52, 48, 36, 27, than a lawyer speaking for the 14-year-old. I mean, Fisher had 39 victims, and some of them it was 2 or 3 times. And when I first heard them, I was like, lightweight. I mean, I really was, you know. But there's no Richter scale.
When my father was sexually abusing me, and when he was beating on me, and when he was beating on my mother, what you get robbed of is being able to discern danger. I was afraid to disagree with somebody. I was the most agreeable person. He helped me become a perfect doormat. I was scared of everybody. People did not know how scared I was as an adult. And in fact, they saw me so confident. They said, Donna, why were you so, you seem so confident. I was just, fear was my middle name. People see me now and I'm like crouching tiger, hidden dragon. I'll kick your butt. But back then, I was so scared.
You live a lifetime of isolation because you keep so much of yourself private, because you believe, because I believed, as almost every sexual abuse survivor believes, if you knew this about me, you would never want to speak to me again. You ought to try telling someone that you love that you're not who he has believed that you've been all these years. And I couldn't even raise my head. I could never have looked Larry in the eye to try to tell him that I'm not who you think I am at all. I'm a really bad person. I don't know what words I used, but when I don't know how he ever could have put it together, but he just came over and just took me in his arms and he just said, I understand everything now. I understand everything now.
When I finally got my chance to tell my story and broke through that wall of silence and shame and guilt, and I smashed through it, One of the most amazing calls of my life happened that day, which was from my best friend who said, "I am so proud of you. I read the newspaper. I am so proud that you've told this story because Father Jim sexually abused me too. And I've never told a soul until I'm calling you now." Healing from sexual abuse is a lifelong process. One is not survived, one survives over time, hopefully. And then transferring from surviving to thriving is a whole nother challenge, but it takes a lot of work.
The amazing thing is there were all these parents who were powerful and had plenty of money and, you know, could call the big lawyers, and they were chicken. Whereas, you know, the tomato farmer from Johns Island in the beat-up old pickup on the side of the road, what can I do? And so to talk about my father, to know that he was willing to stand up for me, it gave me the room to be okay to stand up for myself. What gives me hope is it has worked out. And if it's worked out this far, then it's gonna be okay. And if it can be okay for me, it can be okay.
When I think about stopping child sexual abuse, I think about a trip I took to Gettysburg 3 years ago. I was blown away by what it took to stop the institution of slavery. Everyone from the president to the military to the legislator to the lowliest slave got involved. They got a conscience. They stopped the abuse. The same thing needs to happen to stop child sexual abuse. Everyone is going to have to get involved. Everyone is going to have to get a conscience. All you have to do, if you lose hope, you walk the field to Gettysburg.
I found myself saying at Jennifer's wedding, "This is the happiest day of my life," which I'm sure Larry must have thought, well, wasn't our wedding day, and Jennifer must have thought wasn't my birth, but her wedding day was the happiest day of my life because it was that day that I realized, watching her husband Joel with his family and watching Joel reacting with Jennifer, she had chosen someone so much like Larry. She had chosen a loving, kind, funny, nurturing husband. I knew by the man she married that I had broken the chain of abuse on my branch of the tree forever.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us and watching the video. We hope that you found it informative. And again, just to refresh your memory and to set it out there so that everybody understands, the Darkness to Light is an international nonprofit organization that seeks to protect children from sexual abuse by placing the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of adults. In doing that, they created a Stewards of Children program. It's a sexual abuse prevention program. You just watched the 20-minute video that tells you a little bit about the program. If you want to bring it to your organization, it's a 2.5-hour video-based program, and a facilitator trained in teaching the program will come and teach you how to go through the entire course, which we feel is very educational and very impacting and powerful for protecting children. So now I'd like to go back to my panel and share with the panel that there is something called a tipping point that this research-based training is based on. And it basically says that if we can reach 5% of our community with any change in behavior and train and educate them, we can get the momentum going within our communities to literally change how we accept or tolerate certain behaviors, approve or change our laws. Our tipping point in Cobb County is 5%. That is about 25,285 adults that we need to train in this program just within Cobb County. The state of Georgia has accepted the responsibility to do 5% across the entire state. The governor's office and the First Lady are behind the Darkness to Light Stewards of Children program 110%. So I keep that in mind as I ask you, after watching this video and the powerful impact that it has on you, if you still feel this is something we need to do to protect our children in reaching our 5% in Cobb County. And I'll open that up to the panel. Dr. Beckford.
This video is the most moving and heart-wrenching video, and it tells the story of Darkness to Light in such a beautiful way. It brings to mind only what I say to the little ones in my office who share with me a tough story about a bad touch or something that has happened to them, and that is, you are so brave, and thank you for telling me. In my role with the Academy of Pediatrics, two of the areas of focus that have always been primary are the prevention of child abuse and more recently a focus on mental illness. And those are inextricably linked because the impact of sexual abuse is not for a single point in time, but it's lifelong. And it can, in situations where it's not addressed, be passed on from generation to generation, and so it needs all our energy and all our devotion. I'm so proud of those who've stepped forward to expose their vulnerable moments, because the potential and the empowerment for preventing that from happening to another child is enormous. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that it's the potential to change a life, because anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, drug abuse, addictions of various kinds often have their roots from those very traumatic moments. And for those who step forward to look the perpetrator in the eye, they're really saving lives. And we should be very humbled and very honored that we have any opportunity to stand by them and help them to make a difference and to bring more people into the light.
Thank you. You bring up a wonderful point of the cost of health care that goes up with children who have been sexually abused and as they go into adulthood. So thank you very much for sharing that, because the cost to our society is in the billions and trillions of dollars for children who are abused, sexually abused, and do not get treatment as they grow into adulthood. So that's very important. Other comments about the video from the panel? Yes.
The realism. I have not seen a video of this light in my lifetime. The realism, I think the fact that these weren't actors, that these were actual victims, and again, being able to relate as a victim myself, I can tell you that the testimonies given, while very heart-throbbing, were very realistic. And I think that a face needs to be put on this type of abuse. This is what communities and society needs to see, that these people are you, me, these are your family members, these are people that you see every day. A face needs to be given with this crime, and I would hope that this video does two things at the least. I'm sure to do more. One is to enlighten us as a community about the signs and about the procedures that need to be taken to do something in response to this type of crime. Know that it's a crime, and then that it's our responsibility, all of us, to take part of it in order to provide prevention to empower the victim. I think that a lot of the stigma of shame and guilt, I can personally, I know that I didn't reveal, I was abused from 5 to about 12. But no one knew about it till I was about almost 30. You see, because there's a stigma, there's a shame attached to it, and it's because the victim doesn't realize that, you know, you're not responsible for what happened. You are the innocent party. The guilt needs to be put on the person it belongs to, and it needs to be prevented, it needs to stop. And families need to rally around the victim and help to make this something that just stops. You know, again, it's an epidemic, and it's a silent epidemic. I don't think everybody knows about the ramifications of abuses. There's psychological, there's emotional. On a personal note, I am a kidney transplant recipient. Well, not recipient yet, but I'm waiting for transplant. Why? Because all those years hiding that secret gave me stroke level blood pressure, or ballooning blood pressure, which eventually just destroyed my kidney function. That's the type of thing that this type of damage can do. Fortunately, I didn't have mental damage. There was some emotional, but that was worked out. But just on the body, you know, you were not meant to hide and carry such a weight, you know, and even physically it can do damage to you. And I don't think people even realize that. So imagine what children are going through.
Well, thank you, Officer Cole. You bring up a good point, you know, obesity. There's a lot of efforts right now with obesity to, you know, eat healthier, get more exercise, but there is a link between child sexual abuse and morbid obesity in adulthood. And so you bring up a lot of the health concerns. Ms. Stouffer.
I'm just struck by the fact that no child should have to suffer that way. And I too found that video just extremely powerful. But the other thing that comes to mind for me is how often the adults around a situation choose to protect the institution. The mother who chose to protect her family as a unit instead of, you know, confronting the dad or asking the daughters what was really happening. The bishop who chose to protect the church instead of protect the children. And we see that over and over again, and it's a tragedy, and it just adds to the pain, and it's part of what I think keeps this going in families, churches, and in the community.
Thank you. That's a perfect point, because they really literally do protect the institution, and we have to switch that and start protecting the child. Excellent point. Thank you so much. Ms. Sparks.
It's a cliche, but I think that from an advocate standpoint, if we are going to say that the children are our future, then we need to act as if they are our future, and that is protect them and reach out and take this training and utilize it throughout the community, and the organizations reach out and take it. If you're going to make that statement and you're going to be true to that statement, then we have to act in that fashion, and this training will help you empower yourself or empower your organization to prove that, in fact, you are going to take the steps to protect the children.
Is it better for someone to be wrong? We educate, we tell, and then someone suspects and they want to do something, but there's a lot of hesitance on adults to respond. Is it better for them to be wrong?
I would rather be wrong than not say anything at all. You don't need all the facts. All you need is the suspicion. If you have the suspicion, report it and let the professionals in the field investigate it and decide whether or not there are actual these allegations are actually true. So don't hesitate. You don't have to have all the facts. I think, Ann, you spoke to that earlier and might want to expound upon that.
Well, and you don't have to have all the facts. It's one of those situations where if, you know, for instance, if a teacher brought something to my attention, sometimes the teachers or other adults might say, oh, but, you know, this is such a nice family. I'm sure that I'm totally, you know, totally wrong. But it's not really up to them to make the decision. You have your steps, especially if you've had the training from darkness to light. You know what you're looking for. You see these certain indicators, you report it, you tell DFACS, you tell law enforcement, and then it's out of your hands. It's not, so many times I think people feel like, you know, they're the judge and the jury and that somebody's going to find out. The reporting is anonymous. No one has to know that you reported that. And it should be that way, because I think people think, oh, the parents are going to find out and they're going to come and get mad at me, or the uncle's going to find out and come and get mad at me. And really that shouldn't matter. It's the safety and security of that child that needs to be your number one commitment.
Sabrina, from Department of Family and Children's Services, would you rather someone was wrong?
I would rather someone was wrong. And I think a key that is helpful in DFACS is we tell folks, and what I would love the community to understand, is if your report is made in good faith, then you're okay, you're fine. Because if you have suspicion, it doesn't have to be that you saw something and that you know for sure that it is the truth, that this is what's occurring, but you suspect. And then it's up to us at DFACS to do the investigation and to make that determination. The onus is on us. But I think that this video helps folks understand that they need to take responsibility. It's the whole community's responsibility. Even though DFACS is mandated and as a responsibility to investigate. It's our community's responsibility to protect our children, and we're not going to do it alone. DFACS isn't going to do it alone. Law enforcement is not going to do it alone. SafePath isn't going to do it. We need the community, and when we're talking about 25,000 folks that we need to educate, I think that's possible. I think we can do that. I really do believe that, but we have to be committed. And I think in viewing this video, I think it helps me, and I think it would move folks to feel that commitment and make that dedication to that, yes, I'm a member of society, and it is my responsibility that if I suspect child abuse or if it's in my family, I need to let folks know, I need to shine the light on it.
Wonderful, thank you. Lieutenant Sabula, you raised your hand a minute ago.
Yes, I'm more than happy to take these cases. I'd rather somebody be wrong. My point is if I don't know about it, there's nothing there for me to investigate. My investigators don't have anything to investigate. There's no point in having a Crimes Against Children's unit, and that's not right. We need to investigate these cases. If somebody has a suspicion, by all means, give us a call and let us know so that we know that there's something going on. It could be the most innocuous suspicion that you have, but at least there's a suspicion there that we can take a look at and go into the family and see what's going on. Talk to the child and see what's going on with the child. And it may not be anything, but I'd rather have that disclosure come out from somebody so that we can do something about it. And if there is sexual abuse going on, we can bring these people to justice and make sure that we're doing what we need to do to protect everybody else. Because it may not be that's just the one child that's inside that one home. We've had instances where we've had pastors and coaches and things like that come out. It's not just the one child. It goes further beyond that, much further, where they're abusing other children, not necessarily in their own family, but in other families. And that's what needs to really be brought out.
Mr. Reynolds, as our newly elected district attorney here in Cobb County, share with us your vision and what you're looking at in terms of protecting the most innocent in our community.
Well, we're blessed here, Ginger, in that the district attorney's office, as it exists now, has a unit in it that's responsible for prosecuting crimes against children. What we intend on doing with that unit is we're going to expand it. We're going to put another prosecutor in it. We're actually going to allow that unit to prosecute crimes not only against children but against the senior citizens, the elderly too, in this community. That's an issue that we have a lot of concern about, and I know we could do a whole show on it also. But I did want to add one thing as we conclude today. That video, and I know several people on the panel have used the term powerful. I will tell you, as a grown man, as an adult male watching that video and seeing individuals who have reached adulthood, particularly grown men as myself, step out of that darkness and step into a period of time where the light is shining and they're saying, I'm a victim, this is the perpetrator that created this situation with me. I think it's powerful that those individuals say that's when the healing begins. So again, as a society, not only from a legal perspective, but as a moral and ethical perspective, it is our job, it is our duty, it is our responsibility to recognize when a child is being abused, to respond when a child is being abused, and ultimately, as a community, to prevent that abuse in our county.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone on our panel today for joining us on our presentation with It's Time to Talk. It is time to get the message that it is okay to talk about child sexual abuse. We hope that you in the audience will reach out, make a phone call, request the Stewards of Children training so that we can offer the entire training to you, your staff, your organization, your civic group, your church organization, community at large, teachers, anyone, so that we can reach our tipping point at a minimum of 5% in our community here in Cobb to protect children and empower our adults on how better to recognize, report, and respond to child sexual abuse. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing from you.
For more information about how you can prevent child abuse or to request a Stewards of Children training, call SafePath Children's Advocacy Center, 770-801-3465, or visit us online at www.safepath.org.